everybody. My name is Sylvain Rochon, and I am the Paradise Engineer. And today I'd like to talk again about lots of different things related to the economy. I've spoken about this before. A new economy is coming sometime between now and 2040, so one generation, 20 years or so. We should see a drastic change in how we manage the economy, how we deal with the economy, how we live inside the economy, mostly because of artificial intelligence, automation, and natural movements in how the economy is panning out. And we're seeing some crisis situations right now. It's exacerbated because of the COVID pandemic, of course, but they were already there before. More and more automation, more and more AI development, leading to job displacement and job loss. We can't convert ourselves fast enough and be reskilled to non-repetitive, creative work, because that's the remaining jobs, and all the repetitive stuff, which is basically a lot of the blue collar stuff, really. And a bunch of the white collar analysis stuff that computers can do way better than human beings, they're all being kind of displaced. And it's really, really hard to retrain a person that does, repetitive industrial work, for example, or cleaning, or just data analysis to do something completely different that doesn't involve repetitive work or data analysis or things of that nature. Converting people from non-creative tasks to creative tasks. That's very, very difficult to do. So we're finding that out. Like, a lot of people end up, we need to survive. So we end up in the gig economy. We end up in doing a lot of different occupations because we don't have any choice. So now there's been a lot of talk about universal basic income because of the pandemic. Simply because people see the failures in the system and the creases that are appearing, the cracks, and governments see what's coming with how things will evolve as well. So let's talk about what a new economy looks like, because that's really some of the concern. Like, UBI is an interesting concept, and I advocate for it, but it'll have other consequences, and we have to look beyond UBI or beyond quick solutions that are in reach. UBI is one such thing. It's within reach, it's good, but it's going to accelerate movements to something completely different, where UBI is still in some form available, but we're talking about a transformation of the economy, where people need to work for a living towards a world where people do not. So circulation of money and wealth will be very different. We already are complaining about how wealth is distributed now. Well, wait until we're operating under, or we must operate under a completely different system. And this provokes lots of discussions among futurists and government and things like that as well. So let's go into it. And I prepared for once, I prepared something, some more advanced visuals, let's say. So I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to see a little bit of a presentation here, because visuals do help, and I want to make sure people understand this. Okay, so starting things off, right? Now, this is an image of our economy, right? It's really three things. If you boil it down, I'm just keeping to the basic. I'm not going into complicated things. I like high level stuff. It's really the production, management, and consumption, right? The objective of the economy is for us to consume from it, whether it's food, resources, a home, it could be services that we need, like healthcare, education. This is us consuming. This is the market demand, what we want out of the economy. We want to consume. In order to consume, what we figured out a long time ago is that, well, we need to produce the damn things first. And the resources and the production itself needs to be managed in some way. And that created a lot of societal jobs, because initially there were no organized civilizations a long, long, long time ago. every family was actually doing all that stuff for their own selves, right? But now we're organized where we have some people doing production, some people doing management, some people, everybody consuming, but we have divided a society into tasks where everybody is kind of contributing to the society in order for all to consume. But we know from experience that this creates some inequalities. Not everybody's being able to work in the same way and provide the same amount of value. And there's abuses, corruption, and so on that kind of creep into the system where money is lopsidedly distributed and resources therefore are lopsided distributed. Some people own more than everybody else. I think I read recently 60 people in the world like own as much as a half of the rest of the population of the world, something like that. And you've heard these numbers before. This is not surprising. It's because a lot of people end up owning the production and the management, and therefore they siphon off the wealth that they're making because they figure, well, we provide a lot of value and we own the stuff, and consumers are enjoying what we're consuming, therefore we earn that money. So that's a mentality, that's a mindset, right? But ultimately, this is the problem, this is this current situation, and this is what the economy is. That doesn't change. There's always going to be some kind of extraction of natural resources, and conversions end up being consumed, because we will continue to consume, and we won't revert back to the good old days where we had to do everything. You have to farm your own vegetables and end up consuming that, and basically everybody to their own devices, because that also was an issue back then. That's why we created a distribution system. Not everybody was a good farmer. Not everybody was good at transportation, at sales, communication. So we kind of organized, right? So we want to maintain an organization, but without the wealth inequality. And we want to a system that can accommodate all this increase in productivity due to automation. And this is kind of where problems really get exacerbated in the recent days, and will become even worse in the next few years. Consumption is basically, this is us. We're the consumers. We're the end. Where everything, the chain ends. We're the reasons why the whole economy exists, to consume. And because of our technologies, we've been automating a lot of the production, and we're continuing to do so. Even a few years ago, for example, in mines, you had some mines that was like 50% automated already, which is something that used to be very much full of employees and miners. Why? Well, because it's dangerous work, because there's a lot of liability with having people in there in dangerous work, and technology was available to automate that stuff. So a lot of it is automated, and this is across industries all over. As if you can automate it, and there is a pressure to do that, like high liability and so on and so forth, then companies will do that. In the management right now, it's kind of there's still a lot of creativity in management of resources and sales and services. So there's, like, especially if you talk about healthcare and education, like there's a lot of automated systems in there. Like, for example, you can learn a lot from YouTube. Yeah, there's producers of those materials, which are people. But this is an automated system that kind of selects, and the AI kind of gives you what you're looking for in your searches. And you can consume something without an actual body providing with the education. It's like the teacher is providing a lesson for a gazillion people, right? So it's mostly automated, but it's still a partnership. There's some jobs that we want to maintain a human presence in, like especially in services and so on and so forth, out of a desire to maintain kind of a human connection when we're socializing. Maybe we want to see a human doctor because the person also feels what we feel. You know what I mean? Things like that. So there's this combination. The economy is not driving towards automating everything, because again, the consumer is the boss. And we want to make sure that management of resources, like the endpoint that we interface with, in some cases remains human. And that's fine. But the point is, gradually we're seeing a lot of creep of automation. And within the next 20 years, we'll have artificial general intelligence probably available, which means this is an AI that's human capable, that's able to do everything a human would. And it's not going to be inside the same one robot. It's probably going to be a distributed network on the internet that is capable. So you essentially interface with that AGI, and everybody has access to it from your Alexa, from your Cortana, your Google Assistant and whatnot. And there's the processing, and all this AI is kind of operating from the cloud. And then you have actuators in the real world that actually do a lot of things. And I'll get to examples of that are real world right now in a minute, right? So why am I saying that this is going to happen? Like in 20 years, there's going to have all this automated, and this pressure towards AI and automated kind of taking over almost everything, including creative work, except for what we consumers as individuals at certain points in time, we insist on having a person. A lot of the times there's the duplicates, essentially AI, will still be available and be able to do a better job than a human being, even in services and creatives. But sometimes, because we're humans, we'll want to have a human being there anyway, even though it's more fallible, because we want a human experience. We are social persons. So the driver, a lot of the drive towards most things being automated, or at least available as automated, even though the market won't be exclusively automated, is because of how companies and consumers behave with each other. It's pretty simple. Companies have a goal to compete. They have a competition. It's a competitive market. So they're looking for lower costs and higher productivity. We human beings, human workers, are high cost and low productivity. We are higher productivity than ever before because we use computers and high performance, and we use AI, more automation. That's why we become more productive. It's not us as biological beings that are becoming more productive. It's because of the tools we use that we are becoming more productive. And with AI being as smart as we are, or as capable as we are at achieving creative tasks or repetitive tasks, or whatever task there is, well, AI with actuators and robotics and automation can become and progress in productivity infinitely, basically, especially if we're out of the way. So companies have an inherent motivation because of the competition out there, driven by, guess who? Us, to automate more and more. Because we want to consume things at lower prices, and we want more convenience. We want things to be easy to customize to us. We want things delivered to our door. We want things exactly the way we want it, instead of categorized or inside a segment that we may or may not be part of. We want all that stuff. So we're driving that competition in the market, and that means more AI. So that's why companies are investing heavily in AI, because we want it. What happens is there's too much of it. Again, a lot of our jobs will become automated, and people can't reskill to creative AI take over the creative stuff even before even people can be retrained towards that, which is almost impossible to really compete against humans. So ultimately the system kind of breaks down because the current system relies on human beings working. And there's a whole money cycle, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, here's examples of AI investments at work in all types of activities that some people would think would probably never be replaced or be active with robotics and whatnot. This is, for example, delivering your groceries automatically from the farm directly to your table. For example, this is an example already in use and in testing. 3D printing homes, okay, automatically building homes up to spec, analyzing the land from a blueprint, probably designed by an AI or designed by the clients, draw something up in an easy to use software, analyze the 3D printer, builds the home according to those specifications, exactly the way you want it. Weird geometric spaces if you like. These are homes in Belgium that were done this way, right? In genetic engineering and CRISPR, there's a lot of robotics and software and AI being used right now to understand what genes are activated, understand what chemicals could potentially solve a problem or activate a certain genes. And we're experimenting a lot in that, and it helps make the engineers and scientists and researchers much more productive and iterate faster in generating solutions. And eventually, and we're using very intricate software and hardware to sequence genes, something that would take 10 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think in the millions of dollars, I believe, to sequence one genome and take like 10 years. Now it takes a couple of minutes and $100. That's all because of software innovation, productivity enhancements. Our artificial intelligence is going to get into that and reduce the cost further, analyze DNA and know exactly why you're sick, how did you inherit certain things, the mutations that are inside you. We'll probably be able to detect different cancer probabilities from the genome pretty quick. And that's, again, this is the very complex analysis of biology. This is all coming. This is all in the labs currently and being developed, because again, the driver for all of that stuff is our need to have more convenience at lower cost. We want better healthcare. We want better health. We want to have fun and not suffer. And we're driving the pharmaceutical and the research industries. 5G, very soon, a lot of places in the world will have 5G, presumably by 2030. 5G or better will be available on the whole globe, even in inaccessible areas from satellites. And that's 1,000 times the speed that we have now, low latency. So we can basically communicate with each other, possibly even using quantum computing, point to point, at a blink of an eye, and without latency, that you end up being able to do applications where there's no delay in processing, so which is extremely secure, and so on and so on. We can have local farms growing our produce within the cities if we want to, and most of it being automated and compact. Like farms like these have like 400 times the yield of a traditional farm per square foot or square meter. And 95% more water efficient, no insecticides, no pesticides available, all controlled using software to bring the exact specific conditions that would be perfect for the plants to grow, to be flavorful, and grow fast and well every single time. And then we can add the genetic engineering aspects to it, and even experiment with flavors, experiment with species. And then we're not impacting the environment because it's all compact inside city borders. Environment is safe because you're not transporting food from California anymore up to Ottawa in Canada, where 40% of our produce comes from California. So you don't need to order food and have preservatives inside carrots and being transported for 6 weeks on average coming over here. No, they're produced locally, and using all these automated systems and AI and all that stuff. And AI can even anticipate demand and figure out what next to produce so that each vertical farm is highly productive and efficient, right, at producing exactly what's anticipated. We can do cultured meats as well, so we don't need to kill any animals, and vary that as well within city borders. No need for farms and the farmland to raise the animals or to feed them. So that's huge amounts of pollution that can all be automated as well. We can solve things like longevity and live a long life. These are longevity curves from Aubrey de Grey, where he says that the first 150-year-old is already born, and 5-10 years younger than that person, that first 550-year-old, there's the first 1,000-year-old who's also born already. He's already living. This is all because we were able to figure that out and figure the dilemma of curing aging because of highly sophisticated computers allowing us to be more productive, accelerate research, accelerate our understanding of how our very complex body works. AI can analyze a lot of data and crunch a lot of data and do a lot of research way faster than a human being could, and doing precisely without any bias, or at least not the same kind of bias. So what does the new economy look like, right? Compared to what we had before? Well, what we want really is, we're still going to be doing the consumption, but we want automation everywhere because our driver is low cost, low impact, and convenience. So we're going to get there where there's little to no people involved at any point in time. And that should be a desirable place to be, because that's where we get the most cost-effective and most productive consumption, right? Which means the most responsible use of natural resources. Because these AI and these robots can be organized and coded to have no bias. We have biases. You can have these automated systems completely available. Everybody's got everything that they need, basics and otherwise, responsibly pulled from the environment, and we just kind of end up being consumers, but responsible ones, because the unbiased system, that the automated system, is being responsible, the primary responsible for the management of resources and care of the environment. It can crunch those numbers without any bias way better than we can. And if we want still to have a person that does things with us and interact, we can do that at our own free will, whether we want to work or not, or volunteer or not, and have fun with each other. It becomes kind of an option. That's the ideal world. Now you're going to tell me, well, yeah, but there's like, if there's no jobs, like how does the money circulate and all that stuff? Well, what I'm saying here is that we have to kind of build something brand new. You know, the money structure, the way it circulates, which is like this, involves or implies that there are people at all stages of our lives. Basically, I separated those. Again, I'm using simple elements here. You got your consumers, which is the people generally. And then you got government as an entity, does certain things, right? And there are companies. And there's money and value that's being exchanged across the board. And they're all inhabited or controlled by people. In all cases, there's automation currently. But we insist on being people that are being everywhere. So we insist having government with individuals at the helm and working. Okay, same with companies. These are organizations of people that have a similar goal. Most of the people in companies and in government are only involved because they need money to live, because they need to consume. They're part of this group, but they need to be part of this group because they need money to consume. They need to get the value in, the money in, so that they can pay the companies. And government is providing some cash and value back. Like, and we must pay our taxes. We have to pay our fair share because government is expensive. And companies, same thing. They interact with the government in a similar way, and they interact with us. We work for them and get money out of it, and we pay money back. And there's this whole ecosystem that was designed originally to, because we're all cogs in the wheel. We needed to work. We needed to do certain things to produce and manage the resources so that we could consume. And we were embedded in these two systems, in government and companies. And we're stuck with this system where money needs to be exchanged and balanced to avoid inflation, avoid all sorts or depression, because the value of money, if it changes too fast, then you can't buy anymore, and there's different things happening. But the reality of things, like I said before, is that automation is kind of taking over the position of the workers. And if that happens, then money flowing to us, to the consumers, to the real goal, because we will forever be consumers, starts abating and being more scarce. And if that's scarcer, then we can't pay the companies or governments and pay our taxes, basically. And so it's harder to get value back, and this kind of all breaks down. So what's the solution? Well, we need to build a new economy that looks more like this. You got the companies and government become kind of like two of the same thing. You still want to kind of, maybe you still want to pay companies for whatever they produce, to reward them for whatever the value they bring to us. And same with the government. Maybe there's certain things that government does, but the whole resource management, the concepts inside the economy, the production and management, right, of resources can be handled exclusively by boop, 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 AI and robotics, with nobody owning it, kind of like a decentralized blockchain. This is software and hardware kind of working for everybody, for the companies, for the government, for the consumers, everybody. And all they do, they can self-manage. They can get their energy from the sun and other resources. They can manage their resources, the environment, all that stuff responsibly, because we code them that way. We organize them that way without any bias. But they're separated now from companies and governments. And the companies and government can essentially become more of a luxury in a way. Especially the companies. The government, maybe we still want to have the human factor in governing ourselves, but it's separated from the production and management of resources. This is basically your modern basic income in the future, right? You got a system that is unbiased and separated from governments, ownership, companies, or the consumers, that just bring value. It brings us, management of the environment, brings us all the resources, the energy we need, all the basic stuff for everything to function. And it scales based on population and need, right? Automatically on some kind of blockchain system, if you will. So it's a concept, right? Decentralized, unowned, immutable, and it kind of measures what we need, and we kind of input, and we can feed back to it as in we produce data just like we're doing now, just like Amazon detects what you need and tries to offer you something. Same thing. It kind of looks into what we're doing and figures out how much resource needs to be exploited and how much is responsible to be exploited, and providing that value of those resources to whoever needs it. And then you still have the companies and governments, which are organizations of people that decide to do things because of reasons. People decided to join together, build a company because they want to build something different. They want to enjoy the process of building and inventing and creating together and providing value to the consumers. And consumers could have a money exchange, if there is still a need for it, to the companies and the government to kind of feed them with value and exchange. And then there's this trade. But this becomes all optional, because you got all your basic stuff through the automated systems that is completely unbiased and separated. Everybody's got what they need. And then you got these two here, the companies, the governments, and consumers, which are individuals and groups of people with purposes that are exchanging value in a fair way using trade money, right? People can still get rich in this system if they do something like really popular, really nice, but everybody's got what they need, the basics. And as long as there's consumer demand for what is, in essence, a luxury, then cool, a company can do very well, and the inventors can get more perks because they provided some additional value from what the management system, the general automated system, did. And of course, in both of these systems, there's still a whole slew of automation to make things productive based on our desires. Ultimately, at some point, we'll probably figure out that the money part is not really that necessary. Once you get used to just luxuries out of value and just occupying your time as consumers and developing companies and managing and governing ourselves responsibly, which is kind of like volunteering in a way, which we already do, even though we have full-time jobs. I think it's 25% of Americans volunteer in some way. That's pretty high. So we end up with a society where we just exchange value, not a value per value like an IOU, but just by existing and being active in the community and enjoying what we want to do. And that's the farther future, where with AI really well established and us being used to having trust in artificial intelligence and what it does unbiased. And we're going to see this through examples by getting accustomed to it. It won't be perfect the first shot. There's going to be iterations and fixes and adjustments, but this is what I recommend we do. And so we don't have an individual that's kind of lording over everybody. Because even if a company like a Jeff Bezos becomes another one, gets really great with a great idea, it's still not providing basic stuff that everybody needs. The system can accommodate all the basic stuff and transportation with high efficiency, because this is AI, and in 20 years, AI that is as smart as a person. And it can increase its productivity and effectiveness exponentially faster than any person. So it can, if there's a great idea that comes from the companies, at some point it gets picked up or improved upon. So the company being involved in government or a company is more of a fun thing or a social responsibility thing. It's not because the economy depends on that for innovation. No, you got AI and robots that are innovating in faster than we are. Okay, this is what we're looking forward to in a way. So a thing like the unconditional basic income, is hot in discussion. Basically, it's a bridge between the two. It doesn't bring us to a new economy. What it does, though, is it makes sure, a little bit like an unbiased robotic AI that I just mentioned, it levels the playing field to a certain point and makes sure that people have, it's not direct products and services from the environment and all that stuff, a lot of nice stuff, but it's a floor of money that can be re-injected into the economy in a more equal fashion. And knowing the past pilots since the 70s and the UBI, we know that it'll reduce healthcare costs. People will be healthier. People will stay in school longer and get better educated for all sorts of reasons, not just because they need a job, but because they want higher understanding of things and more knowledge or more experience in certain things. We know that happiness increases. We know that people spend their money wisely on debt, rent, food when they receive a UBI. We know criminality is reduced by as much as 42% in some communities because they receive the basics to survive and to live without any stress. We know that that's the generally society becomes better. We know that it encourages people to choose a job they are better suited for. That's why they go to school in some cases, because they want a better job that they'll enjoy more, leaving behind a lot of work that a lot of people don't want to do, which leaves room for automation. We don't want to do the work. Companies and the drivers of the market will bring automation to those jobs, and UBI will essentially accelerate the transition between the existing economy and the new economy that I just mentioned. An economy without the need for work or the need for money, ultimately, at some point. That is paradism, basically, coining a term that was created by Rael. You can look him up. He talks a lot about that, and I do too. It's a system that has no work and no money. Right? where essentially it's AI and robots unbiasedly, just like I described. It just creates value responsibly, highly productive and evolutive, and we get to have fun with us in exchanges, in social exchanges, without any stress of survival at all. UBI is part of that bridge that allow us to move from one to the other, because until we relieve the stress of having a job, governments and people will still push for new jobs. We need to maintain jobs because people need to eat. People need to pay the rent. So a UBI kind of solves that stress, allows us to move towards something better. And it'll take years. It won't be like from day one of UBI, we're across the bridge. No, it's going to be a start. Even UBI set up at a federal level in any country is going to take a few years. And then after that, there's going to be, the market is going to, through innovation basically, and movement into the new reality with UBI present, there's going to be a lot more stuff getting automated. At some point, we'll just realize, well, we need to kind of automate everything. And there's just, having a money system is still great, but then, who are we paying? Because there's so much automation. There's not any worker anymore. There's just very few. And we'll transition to something where, okay, let's nationalize an AI so that we take care of all the production, and we'll figure out a relationship and how we're going to be transitioning from all these owners that own the infrastructure to something that's more national, controlled by the people itself. And that's why I'm recommending something akin to a decentralized system like a blockchain, a complex agent-ridden blockchain that controls things with AI. And it's indeed it looks a little bit like a communism in some way, but without the bias. And that's the point. It's like, just have people take care of their own creativity and create like a side economy that does not generate goods and services that provide for people's survival. You already have that, so it's all luxury, all fun, innovation and production at a human level. So that's basically what I recommend. I'm going to stop sharing now, and there's going to be steps. This is kind of an ideology. I'm not suggesting a perfect system. I don't know what this exactly could look like in its detail. I just know that with automation and AI, this timeline is where we're heading, and how exactly we're going to put the blocks into place, and how exactly will we work with an economy where most people are not needed to work, and we'd be a hindrance to productivity if we do. That's a decision economists should probably figure out and crunch the numbers. Innovators and engineers can work on the engineering and the programming of the AI and the robotics and the systems themselves. Politicians have to be involved in legislation and figure out, okay, well, how do we go from a system where you got all these owners that are super wealthy and they basically control the natural resources of a country, where the country is supposed to be controlled by the people? How do we kind of distribute that? How do we make a deal or reorganize things at a national level? I mean, of course, if the people decide from a government standpoint, we're doing this way and that's that, we can basically all collectively own a nation's resources, and therefore the system itself, the robotic system, is owned by everybody equally and controlled by no one, right? And whoever wants to innovate, like myself, I love to innovate and create new businesses and build things. I can do that and drive value in parallel to the automated systems, and just enjoy it. It's not something I would need to do to survive. It was something I would do because I would enjoy it with the right people, and people would receive, and the consumers would be able to consume something that comes from a person, if they so choose. It's not necessary because the AI and the robotics are actually providing basically everything we need, and making sure that the environment is safe and the resources are sustained inside the environment. And that takes care of a lot of things. Doesn't need to be involved in government, even though it could. We can still govern, but we don't need to manage that stuff. We can still figure out everything else that we want to manage and to govern everything else with as much bias or as little bias as we want. But let's make sure that we have an economy that works without workers. That's the point. Anyway, hope you enjoyed, and it's brought you some thoughts and some ideas, and hopefully it can bring some interesting discussions in where are we going and how can we manage all this stuff. Enjoy. I'll have another conversation, I think, probably in the next couple of weeks.